My topic is on abortions. And, abortions have existed since the beginning of time. The early church history treats it only incidentally and sporadically. In some of the research that I did, I found out that in the early years of Christianity, that a man that the penance, like if a man committed murder, he would get 7 years, and his penance would be of just bread and water for 7 years. Now, if you had sterilization, then a woman was sterilized, or went through the process of sterilization, wouldn't have any more children, she would be given also 7 years of just bread and wine. That was her penance. But if a woman committed abortion, would have an abortion, that was only 1 year or 2 years of a penance of the bread and water. And what they felt was like, for the sterilization, it was permanent. It would never, you never would be able to have any children. But if you had an abortion, it was only one time, so you still would be able to have other children. So it wasn't like something permanently. And then also found out that while reading that research, that many people, or in those olden days or medieval days, they felt that when a woman became pregnant, that how they found out that the male fetus would grow faster than a woman, than a female fetus. That because he was a man, and that's why he grew faster than a woman would. It doesn't make any sense, but that's how they felt at that time. But one thing that did develop early on and becomes the dominant tradition in Christianity is the theory of delayed animation or ensoulment. Borrowed from the Greeks, this thought that the spiritual human soul did not arrive in the fetus until as late as 3 months into the pregnancy. Before then, it really wasn't a baby. It wasn't a human being. It was just a thing. It could be a vegetable, like a vegetation, or an animal soul, but it didn't become a human soul until 3 months, after 3 months. And prior to that time, whatever their life there was not human. The idea of delayed ensoulment survived throughout tradition. St. Thomas Aquinas held the view that early abortions were not murder. Since the vast number of abortions done today in the United States, for example, are early abortions, they are not, according to this Catholic tradition, murder. Also, all pregnancy terminations done through the use of RU 486 would not qualify as killing of a human person, according to this Catholic tradition of delayed ensoulment. In the 15th century, saintly Archbishop of Florence, Antonius, did extensive work on abortion. He approved of early abortions to save the life of the woman. This became a common teaching. He was not criticized by the Vatican. He was later canonized as a saint, and thus a model for all Catholics. Many Catholics do not know that there is a pro-choice Catholic saint who was an archbishop and a Dominican. In the 16th century, Antonius de Cordoba said that medicine that was abortifacient, which is one that would cause a woman to miscarry, could be taken given later in a pregnancy if required for the health of the mother. The mother, he insisted, had a prior right. Jesuit theologian Thomas Sanchez, who died in the early 17th century, said that all of his contemporary Catholic theologians approved of early abortions to save the life of the woman. None of these theologians or bishops were censored for these views. The limited pro-choice position was considered thoroughly orthodox and be considered today. Catholic teaching on abortion has been anything but consistent. One period of time, abortion was murder. Another period of time in history, it was okay, and then they went back. So it kept going back and forth. And so finally, in 1930, Pope Pius XI decided to change it by saying that contraception and sterilization were sins against nature, and abortion was a sin against life. The Roman Catholic Church opposes and condemns any and all direct abortions, even pregnancies that result from rape, incest, and present present a danger to the life of the mother are not reasons for abortion. The church teaches that human life is created and begins at the moment of conception. It sees abortion as the termination of an unborn life, and therefore it is always wrong, sinful, and immoral. The circumstances by which life was conceived are considered irrelevant. The church sees a drastic difference between causing death and allowing the process of a certain death to continue. One moment they're stating that all abortions are sin, and then that doesn't matter how or why a woman should continue with her pregnancy. But then, for example, if a pregnant woman has a heart attack and needs an emergency surgery, it is considered morally permissible to put her under anesthesia and operate, even though it's likely that she will spontaneously abort the unborn fetus as a consequence. The distinction is that her body is doing the act of injecting the fetus as an effect of the primary action of the physician, of the doctors, who are trying to save both lives, the mother and the baby. If the baby dies naturally, the church believes that no sin was committed. But if a doctor or nurse directly kills the baby, then it is considered murder. In the case of rape or incest, a woman can get treatment as soon as possible to try to prevent conception from occurring immediately after the rape or incest per the church. The woman can take the emergency contraceptive pill and it's not considered an abortifacient, which is a drug that will cause the miscarriage. According to the church, it must be taken before ovulation or conception takes place. If a woman waits too long for any kind of treatment, usually more than 24 hours, though conception may take place, any procedure or treatment to inject the unviable human embryo is abortion. The church's stand is that even though she is an innocent victim of a horrible crime, the unborn child is also an innocent victim. No matter what the circumstances that led to the conception, once conceived, that child has an immortal soul and has a right to live as the mother, as much as the mother. Now, I wanted to find something what the American Catholic Church states, and there was nothing on their website. But I did find on their website it stated, and this is all from their website, proclaims that unconditional love and compassion of God, which embraces every human person, regardless of their state or condition in life. We believe that who a person is and how a person has chosen to live does not separate them from the love and compassion of God. Morality ought to be the response to the life of the Spirit within each human person and a loving way of life for the whole community. The American Catholic Church in the United States believes that an informed conscience molded on the gospel, values of truth, justice, compassion, and love should be the ultimate motivating force in a person's life. That we teach these values with the individual person in mind and with respect for the individual human freedom and dignity. We trust that if people are living in the spirit of truth, they will be able to decide what is just and right, both in their own lives and within society. Now, this is my personal opinion. I tend to believe that social services should exist in our communities where people can freely access quality health care. Women should have the access to abortions when they need it and when in consultation with their doctors can be performed safely. Women are trusted to make responsible decisions about their lives where skilled and compassionate doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers are allowed and supported in the work they do to enable people to exercise their right to choose. Women must follow their own conscience and respect the right of others to do the same. Women have a right to choose, not anyone else but the woman herself.
So how fascinating that the ancients didn't have a problem in the same way that many in the United States today have a problem with abortion, because they had a different concept of ensoulment. I think we need to go back to that word and really understand what was happening. Because for the ancient people, they had to figure out, when does the soul come into the body? So let's step back here. Okay, the ancient mind tended to think in terms of dichotomies. That is to say, we tended to think in terms of two things. If you can think of one thing, then we can think of the opposite, right? So that we have good and bad, right and wrong, night and day, black and white. We live in this dichotomous world. Okay. So if we have the body, the flesh, then what's going to be the other part to the body? And the ancients, the solution that they had was that we have this soul. The body dies, but good news, the soul lives on. Seemed a good solution. What's the challenge with that? Now we have to figure out, okay, well, if someone has a soul, then when did you get that soul? St. Thomas Aquinas, Raphael mentioned St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas believed that there were different levels of souls. The human being had a rational soul, but also other creatures have souls as well. He believed that animals had animal souls, not rational, but animal souls. Plants have vegetative souls. Everything has a soul. So we have this body, the plant, the animal, the human. It has this body, this physical structure, but somehow it has this soul that comes into it. So what is this ensoulment? It was their way of trying to explain, when does that fetus within the womb of the mother, when does it become a human being? And what was their solution? About 3 months into the pregnancy is when ensoulment must occur. Did ensoulment happen at the moment where the two tangoed? No. Shortly thereafter. About 3 months. So they're thinking if pregnancy, the ancients were trying to figure all of this out. The ancients figured out, okay, if we're talking about 9 months from the time that an event happens to the time that a creature comes into this world, when does the soul jump from wherever the soul jumps down into that body? They determined that, well, if it's about 3 months or so, then that gives us some leeway, and abortion is not an issue. You follow me?
In other words, from the time that the fetus is planted to 3 months, then it's not considered alive, right?
For our ancient ancestors, this was not a viable human being yet. They knew enough about nature to know that if that fetus is outside the mother's body, it's not going to survive. There comes a certain point where that fetus is developed and it can survive. It's taken out of the womb.
So it would be like after 3 months, and
so
you
for
can
them,
consider it being human or...
There you go. Okay. So for them, ensoulment happened at 3 months. And so good news for you, Mom. You have 3 months to decide, once you're pregnant roughly, before that child within you has a soul. Fascinating concept. Because essentially for us today, now in the 21st century, we have to ask that question of ourselves. When is that thing a human being? For those who've tended to support abortion, they tend to see how it is that mother doesn't tend to have... Some mothers have more of a relationship with that thing within them. From the day in which they're pregnant, that's my child, and they give it a name, and they have a relationship with that. For other mothers, think those especially who find themselves in situations where they didn't want to be pregnant, right? Cases of rape, incest, you name it. There are all sorts of cases where that woman did not want to be in that situation, and suddenly she finds herself with that potential human being inside her. The ancients solved that problem. Ensoulment occurs in about 3 months. What has been the response of the Roman... So the Roman Church in the United States, there are some commentators, philosophers, etc., who have suggested that the Roman Church in the United States has been hijacked by a very conservative anti-abortion agenda, where the litmus test of whether you are Catholic or not comes down to one issue. And what is that issue, unfortunately? This lightning rod issue of abortion.
Timeless conception, you see.
So it would be important for us to understand what it is that they say, so that we can think to ourselves, is that what we believe? Ultimately, you have to say to yourself, is that what I believe? Is that what you believe? So for them then, the question becomes, when is this a human being? And their solution becomes, it is a human being from the moment of conception. So biologically, the criticism of this is based on a 1970s biology. Let's try to think through what they're saying here. They're trying to say, okay, we understood enough about sex in the 1970s to understand that sperm and egg unite, that implants itself in the wall of the, help me out, there you go, and then it grows to be what it becomes. Okay, we knew enough to understand that it takes sperm and it takes egg coming together to be able to produce what this is. And so the response of the anti-abortion movement in the United States was, when sperm and egg join, we refer to that as the moment of conception. How interesting that Raphael then is talking about how it is that, okay, maybe there's a time before this moment of conception, which is quick, right? Is there a time before the moment of conception, before the sperm and the egg join? Whoa, is there a time when we can head that off and it's not a sin? Interesting question, because essentially the Roman Church's message is meant, once those two kiss, it's over, right? So if there's a way to head it off, maybe there's less evil that occurs in all of this. This raises so many sticky issues. We're going to come to you in a moment, Andy. This raises so many, we get into such a sticky thicket here. Partly because if it is true that the church now centers on one issue to define whether you're Catholic or not, should it be this issue? Seems to me that if we're going to pick one issue to judge whether you're Catholic or not, it should be, are you loving God and are you loving neighbor? Because then you're following the footsteps of Christ. Then it seems that would determine whether you're Christian or not, whether you're Catholic or not. Instead, the Roman Catholic Church in the United States has tended to be hijacked by these conservative voices, where the litmus test is, what do you believe about abortion? And so they hold bishops' feet to the fire. What do you believe about abortion? Are you with us or against us? If you're with us, we'll give you our money. Isn't it true that if you want, power comes from one of two places, organizing people and or organizing money? There's money talks. I hate to say it like that, but in the Roman Catholic Church in the United States, the conservative voices that have sway, it's because they have money. And so when this issue becomes this lightning rod issue to determine whether you're Catholic or not. If you're a bishop, do you want to be accused of not being Catholic? There are a lot of bishops who kowtow to these voices, who come to them and put them on the line publicly, ready to embarrass bishops for not being ready to come out and to take a stand where they are. It touched us at Holy Family most vividly back in 2011, because we would not be here today if it weren't for the issue of abortion and the Roman Catholic Church's stance. It was in April of 2011 when we invited a U.S. Roman Catholic Hispanic Congressman, Luis Gutierrez, from Chicago to Cristo Rey Catholic Church, Cristo Rey Roman Catholic Church, a church that on a Sunday had 8 masses, only one of which was in English. We invited him to talk about immigration reform to these people who came. We were serving 5,000 people the weekend. To come and talk about immigration reform. And the bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Austin said he cannot speak there. Why? Because of his stance on one issue. And that was that litmus test issue of abortion. So we have to be thinking through this issue ourselves, only because you have to decide within yourself, when is what's happening there okay or not? And different people are going to have different answers to that question. Some people are going to see it as murder, the murder of a human being. Other people are going to see it as a woman exercising her freedom over her body. There are multiple perspectives. In the American Catholic Church, rather than entering into all of that, the litmus test for us is not how you feel about abortion. The litmus test is, are you loving God? Are you loving other people? Are you being compassionate? Are you excluding people? Right? Because it becomes such a weighted issue. Rafaela did bring up, I just want to mention it, she mentioned the word circumstances. Right? The churches tend to say that, you know, we have to think of the circumstances and think of the intention of people here. The American Catholic Church, it's not that you're choosing some evil, it's just that we've got to believe that the Spirit is in every person, and every person, being human, is going to make what he or she perceives to be the best choice in this decision. So, right or wrong, good or bad. Do we judge one another for the decisions that we make? Or do we be the compassionate face of God?
Since abortion is not an issue in some countries, approximately what portion of the world is it an issue? And does that mean that, like, if Japan is not an issue in Japan, they can't have any bishops?
Excellent question. So much of it depends on context and culture. I think you're onto something here. Because in a nation like China, with its traditional one-child law, okay, got news for you. But if you've already had one child, and the law tells you there's not an option for another child, but you're pregnant, got news for you, right? I mean, it's fascinating to see the views of people from other cultures. So the view of a person from China, if we invited a person from China into this room, I have a feeling that he or she would tell us, or would ask us, what's the big deal here, people? What's the big deal? Right? Okay, so you got pregnant yesterday. I understand that part. But that organism within you is not yet viable. It has the potential for being viable, but someone from another culture is going to see it in a different way. Our ancient ancestors solved that. Raphael pointed that out. They suggested about 3 months, maybe that's when the soul jumps down from wherever it jumps into this organism. You got 3 months. People in China, not an issue. Within the Roman Catholic Church in the United States, we have to acknowledge it would be unfair. It's unfair to characterize everyone as being conservative and focused on this one issue, because there is a group of people within the Roman Church who refer to themselves as Catholics for choice, simply meaning we are faithful Roman Catholics, we love our church, but we disagree on this issue. And that's good, and that's healthy. It's part of being an adult, right? We're all going to have different
But
ways.
is there, like, would you say, you know, what part of the world is it not an issue? About what percentage of the world? Like those countries where adultery, you know,
Yeah.
is against the law, what would you guess would be?
Well, how did it become such a big deal? Is my question. Because if it's not a big deal in other places, but we're trying to put the spotlight on it, I think that says more about. Well, that just says so much though, because it's not just abortion; it's sex, you know, and it's like the church's opinions on sex, or like how we got to you know, the subject of a fetus or a baby or abortion, you know.
My perspective is simply, I live here in the United States. This is my culture. I know it best. So I speak most for the United States of America. That here within the Roman Church, how interesting that it's largely the Roman Church, right, that has this real issue. I know that within the Roman Church throughout the world, right, the Roman Church during the last 30 years has had the leadership of some very conservative voices. So there are a lot of people who are of the Roman Church throughout the world who share similar views. How widespread is that, Andy? I can't answer that. I do know that statistically there are about 1 billion Roman Catholics in the world, but do they all toe the party line on this issue?
No.
I'm guessing it's not the case. So I'm guessing it's largely an issue for some Roman Catholics, especially Roman Catholics in leadership, if you follow me. For a lot of lay people, how they feel about abortion is a personal issue. But if you're a public figure in the Catholic Church, there are people who are going to ask you to take a public stand on abortion. There are people who look at me in the American Catholic Church and who want to know what I feel about abortion. I told you about the story of my visiting a Roman Catholic priest lately. One of his first questions was, what does your church believe about abortion? For him, that determines whether I'm Catholic or not. That is telling.
Now, is this part of what I'm about to speak about here, canon law, which developed in the 11th century? Or is it something that is scriptured into the Bible?
Excellent question. So it's not canon law. If we were to step back, some people are going to take a look at that Bible, they're going to use that book to proof text, and they will show you the verse where it is. Where do you think they're going to? They're going to point to verses like, "Thou shalt not kill." Okay? So, wait a minute, the Bible is more gray than that. The world is not as black and white as we think. When the person wrote, "Thou shalt not kill," were they talking about that fetus? Because remember, our ancient ancestors believed in this period of ensoul. They later came to believe in this period of ensoulment. So obviously, this is a later issue, right? When Moses, if Moses ever carved those words into a piece of stone, was he thinking of an unborn child in the womb of his mother, right? So the Bible doesn't directly address so many issues like stem cell research, etc., like abortion, but we could use proof text if we wanted to justify our view on just about anything, from slavery to the oppression of women to our opposition to abortion. So it's not a matter of the Bible, it's not a matter of canon law. The question then becomes, where does it come from? And that's why it just seems that it comes more from this conservative bent in the Catholic Church, which recently, we're talking within the last 30 to 40 years, has seen abortion as the litmus test for whether you are Catholic or not. And if you come out in favor of a woman's right to choose, then you are not Catholic. And what grates on me is more their choice of words, because what I hear, if they were to say that they're anti-abortion, then I would pat them on the head and send them on the way and say, you do what you need to do in your fight to be anti-abortion. What grates on me is when they're disingenuous. Instead of saying that they're anti-abortion, they say that they're pro-life. There's a difference there. And it struck me in a big way when I was at Cristo Rey, that parish where we invited this senator who was not pro-life, because my view was, this senator is interested in immigrant issues. He is pro-life. You follow me? But what's happened is that those conservatives have hijacked this term pro-life to be able to determine who is pro-life or not. And I'll never forget it. After the 12:30 p.m. Mass one day, there was a gentleman who was so staunch in his anti-abortion views, he called himself pro-life. And so on the one hand, he's publicly saying that he's pro-life and insisting that everyone, like Father Jamie, be pro-life. But on the other hand, he could advocate for the death penalty, and I'll be damned if they killed someone else, they should be killed. Wait a minute, buddy. That is not pro-life. I just need to point out for a moment that you are not pro-life. What I'm hearing is that you're anti-abortion. I'm not hearing by your words that you're pro-life, because a pro-life person does not wish the death penalty on anyone. That's not pro-life. That's anti-abortion.
That's one question comes in there on, like they will say the Catholic, Roman Catholic, at one time mentioned that if that person had been raped or cause of a bad sickness, then it was all right for them to have an abortion.
So it depends on the time and the circumstance. So St. Thomas Aquinas lived in one period where he had no problem with this. Here in the United States, if you believe that from the moment of conception, if once those two parts kiss, sorry, it's over. That's a human being, some people say. Some people say it's a human being. Others say it's a potential human being. It has the potential to one day be a human being. It's not viable yet.
Is that when they go right after they've been assaulted or raped, whatever, and to see about getting cleared at the hospital or before?
So it raises a question, because the term that Raphael used was RU486. In plain English, what RU486 is the abortion pill. It's a pill that you're able to take. It's abortifacient. It aborts the fetus within you. So that if you were impregnated, it's a way for you to abort that fetus.
I wanted to ask Rafaela, legally, in this country, the law allows an abortion.
Right.
What, 3 months or how many months?
Up to
Or
3 months usually.
Up to 3 months, right?
So the pill, well, this is where the pill comes in, then it's legal for them to get the pill. Weren't they against that at one time for the abortion? Not abortion, but the birth control pill?
There you go. So and we have various questions. For us as a church, what's important is to ask, there is the question of what's legal, but for us as a church, we also ask what's moral or ethical, what's right. As in, just because something's legal doesn't mean that it's moral or ethical, which is where the Catholic Church stands on this issue. The Roman Church, pardon me, the Roman Church says it may be legal abortion, but it is not right. There are a lot of people within the Roman Church who disagree, who tend to see, you know, if a person is making that decision for whatever reasons, should we not be more compassionate than hammering that person on the head saying, I'm sorry that you were raped, but you have to carry that child to term. Ultimately, every person in this room has to decide where you fall on this issue. There have been some people who come to Holy Family Catholic Church hoping that Father Jamie would take a stronger stand against abortion, that Father Jamie would be more anti-abortion, and are disappointed that Father Jamie is more pastoral because they prefer that he be more a Pharisee than following the footsteps of Jesus. Yeah.
Another question, this is about the men. If a man has a vasectomy, did you look into that?
No.
So let me address that, because she did mention sterilization. So let's mention sterilization just briefly, only because this goes back to natural law theory again. So in the same way that the ball is inclined to go down, the ball in the incline is inclined to go down. We have certain inclinations, certain things are natural. Sterilization, the Roman Church has long said, is not natural, right? You were born with certain sexual organs that do certain things. You shouldn't do things to those sexual organs to frustrate what they were meant to do. So whether you're having a vasectomy, a tubal ligation, whatever, you know, males, females, different people can have procedures done to them that will prevent
So that's a sin.
pregnancy. So some people will look at that and say, that is a sin because it's going against nature, and who are you to play God? Other people, again, would look at that issue and say, did God not give you a mind? How beautiful that God created this creature who could be a co-creator and who could decide if he or she is ready and or able to want to bring life into this world.